I'm assuming the money was fairly decent.
Well, £3 million. I mean, it was 25, about 30 years ago now. So yeah, it was good money, you know.
Did you make £3 million?
No, because we got arrested beforehand.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate for us, but good for the system. But yeah. Hello, my name is David Henty, and I'm an art forger.
When I asked David to introduce himself, and he stole me down the river. David, you've done a lot more than that, but you know, David's the person who I reached out to when I watched a documentary on Weiss, and you know, it was a pretty entertaining documentary. So, David Henty, welcome to the Better Than Peter podcast. And yes, you are an art forger, and here you are.
But I'm proud to be.
Proud to be, yeah. There's no hiding about that. So for people, I mean, out there listening, just because, you know, for the most part, we've had people who are on the straight and narrow, who are keeping, let's say, quote unquote, cleaner career choices. I want to go back a little bit to your younger days when, maybe not when you were born, but when you were forging British passports, as you had mentioned in one of the documentaries. Take me to how you got into that, and a little bit about how good were you, how bad were you? I'm fascinated by that.
Well, I've always been, my dad was an antique dealer, and he was actually a forger as well. He used to forge bits of jewelry. So when he had an antique shop, I used to take paintings, old paintings weren't much good, and I used to sign them up with different names. I'd add bits to them, take bits out, make them more interesting, basically. I never thought there was much money in it because he never paid me. So yeah, me and my dad. But so anyway, so I was always good at art. I've got 4 brothers and a sister, and we've all got that artistic vent. My sister Shani is consistently #1 in Amazon book sales. Shani Struthers. My brother Steve, he's a fantastic draftsman. Paul and Tony buy jewelry and watches. They're all, you know, we've all got that artistic vent. So it happened that when I did the passports, what happened was because of an associate I knew, a friend of mine, who's a good friend of mine, still is, he asked me, could I do the security on the passports, the watermarks and different stuff like that. So I knew how to do watermarks because I'd faked a few watercolors and different stuff, you know. Nothing major, but I did a few little bits. So that was basically how I got into it, for doing the sort of watermarks, and different security issues on the raised paper. So when you rub your finger along like the braille, just little things that I knew how to.
I'm still fascinated. How far along in the process were you doing it successfully before you got caught? Did you get caught on your first attempt? Give me a little bit more detail on that one.
No, we didn't get caught because of the passports. I mean, we did driving licenses, MOTs, tax discs. We tried all different things, you know, to hone our skills, basically. So we looked at the way they did things, you know, and then how we could circumvent it. No, it just happened. There was in the crew that we were with, there was 4 of us involved. One of them was telling his friend who happened to be an informer.
Oh, wow.
So that's how we got. So we actually did the passports, and you know, we printed them, and we were just about putting them together when we got arrested. But yeah, not a nice experience. And to be fair, it was the law of the money that did it. And sometimes when I look back now, I think, you know, yeah, it was. I wish I hadn't sort of, you know, been greedy, really. But when someone puts that amount of money in your, you know, promises that amount of money, you do funny things. Yeah. You know.
I mean, especially if you were, in a weird kind of a way, really good at it, which again, it's not something, but I bet there'll be a handful of people around the world who are doing it at that level. And as you said, you did driving licenses, you did other forms of ID. I'm assuming you got away with that. So
yeah, we looked at money. We looked at all sorts of stuff. I mean, the security and the money at the time was fairly simple. The silver line sandwiched between the paper and the watermarks and stuff were fairly simple stuff, you know. and the raised ink, is a different printing process, but it wasn't difficult, and so we looked at all aspects of it. But to tell you the truth, I'm glad I'm out of it. I'm glad I'm not.
Yeah. All right. So segueing away. So how long were you behind bars for the passport thing?
I got sentenced to 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
And I did 2 years.
Okay. And once you were out, were you, I'm assuming, on probation?
I was on, license for quite a while.
Okay.
It's quite a while ago. I'm trying to remember now.
Hey, I bet you haven't been asked this question, and that's the reason why this is not a cliche. David, tell me about your paintings kind of podcast. Yeah. So we'll get to that stuff as well. But I wanted to definitely ask some of the stuff which you've not been asked, just because one, it also tells about your career transition, because in jail was where you started working on art, and that's what I want to segue towards as well. Yeah. So obviously, you grew up in a household which has an artistic background. You're using it not for the right kind of things, but then when you're in jail, tell me a little bit how you transitioned to doing that in terms of paintings.
Well, I was actually writing when I was first in the prison. I was writing a book, and so I used to go to the education. I had my computer there, and I was writing and stuff. So that's how I basically. And then what happened? I got transferred to another prison, and I went over to the education department, and I thought, I'll enroll in the art department there, and that was it really. It was like when a bird takes off in the sky, his first flight. I really got into it, and my time flew. I mean, I didn't even know I was there half the time, because I was just involved in painting and stuff, and drawing, and all aspects of learning. The only thing was, I think, is I was drawn to the dark side. I was always interested in the forgeries and that sort of side of the art world.
So you hadn't completely learned your lesson even while in jail.
No, well, I just perhaps it's people's makeup. We're all different.
Right.
What makes you tick or what makes me tick.
Sure.
I was always interested in these stories of how an artist would get away in a basement somewhere and paint a Picasso or a Van Gogh, and it would go through and it'd make things that fascinated me, and I wondered how. And I suppose this is a bit like the passports. It harks back to it all. Yeah. Because you look at something and you wonder how they did it.
Yeah. So can I assume that you watched Catch Me If You Can?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I would have been shocked if you told me you didn't watch it. Did it bring back memories?
Yeah. Well, the printing press and all that sort of stuff. We were there, doing exactly the same thing. We paid the printer. He's now dead, but we paid him to use his printing press at night, and we had a printer, and then that used to go in and do it. Set all the plates up and do the printing and all that sort of stuff. But we did. I mean, it was good fun. It was, the adrenaline was there, and I think that's a lot to do with it. A lot of time, that adrenaline, that rush, that it's quite good fun being on the outside rather than being, just going along in a straight line, going to work or whatever. And it's a heady sort of mix.
It's still not a career path I will advise my listeners, but fair enough. Everybody ticks different. So just on that note, wanted to make sure I put in that caveat.
I believe that anything you can make, someone else can make. Okay. So I was interviewed a little while ago by the passport people, the police, and informally, just in a chat. And they were asking me how I would look at the passports, and what I would do to copy it. But it is it's a different way of doing it now. I think you'd have to do it digitally with the computer and stuff, which basically are more hand-eye coordination. But people now would do it on the computer.
Got it.
So yeah, it can be done, I reckon.
Okay. So how old were you when you were forging passports?
I think in my late 20s.
Late 20s. And how long were you doing it? And
yeah. I mean, we looked at that time. I remember buying. We looked at stamps. Remember you used to go in charity shops and you used to buy a pound bag of stamps. I don't know, you know, you used
David,
to buy
I'm
these.
not that old, but I'll take your word for it.
We used to be able to buy it
Okay.
at certain places, but then we had a bathtub, because it just reminded me. And what we used to do is just put a chemical in there, and it lifts the franking mark, and then you dry them, and then you can use them again. You know, but then when you do that wholesale, you can start selling them to firms,
Right.
For half the price and stuff. So we were looking at all sorts of stuff. You know, I sleep well at night now.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna now again talk about once you got out. Okay, you've been now painting. It's safe to say that you started getting really good because again, being in prison, there wasn't a whole lot much to do. And one, you love doing it, and then secondly, I think that's probably the best breeding ground for you to just get better and better and better.
Yeah. Well, I suppose one of the reasons why I became a forger rather than an artist in my own right was because, you know, I look at art and I fall in love with it, and you know, I get fascinated by certain artists, and then I wonder how they did it, you know, how they got that effect, or what their thought process was. And I suppose in that respect is why it's easy for me to forge, because I've become so into the artist, you know, so absorbed that you know, and I want to know how they did it. So I break it down step by step to go back to the beginning of the canvas and how we put it down there, and how we build the colours up, or how we do the shading. And that's where I suppose for me it's easier to become a forger. I think I'm probably born to be a forger rather than an artist in my own right, you know, because
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you might have a sort of brain. I look at things and work out how they did it. So maybe I'm wired slightly different.
I think so. That's a simplistic point of view. I guarantee a fake Picasso sells much more than a David Henty as well, a David Henty original, just because a fake Picasso would be a much more. And I wanted to ask this later, but I think this could well be a question now. Do you think the people who are buying, knowing fully well that you're creating it and it looks very close to the original, do you think they're buying it to hang on their, I don't know, dining table, room, or living room or something, just to get that wow factor of people coming in? And you know, a lot of people don't know art. Frankly speaking, a lot of people in art will still not know art. And don't you think people buying art from you knowingly are buying these, you know, I wouldn't call it fake because you use the term forged copies, or are they buying it just because of that people admiring that they have this Picasso hanging on?
I suppose there's all different reasons. I mean, I remember selling a painting to an MP's wife. Well, she collected it. She's an MP, and he's had an art gallery, a prestige art gallery in London. And anyway, I was chatting to her, and I said, "Oh, you know, why are you buying it?" And she said she was going to put it in the dining room, and then what they were going to say, because if it was real, it wasn't a Picasso, it was another artist, but if it was real, it was worth several, you know, £100,000 or so. So they were going to, as a conversation piece, you know, someone said, "Oh, you know, is that a Sickert?" Well, we're doing homework. It might be, it might not be. So we're still looking into it and stuff, you know.
Okay.
So they bring up the conversation, you know, and it's a talking piece. But yeah, I think, you know, why do people have Gucci bags, fake Gucci bags?
Sure. And I completely buy into that because, you know, not everybody can afford it, but there is a certain prestige to having that bag. And again, a lot of people will not be able to distinguish it. No. You're clear that you are making copies or forging it, but was there ever a time once you got out that you were trying to sell this somewhat not, I wouldn't say knowingly telling people, or were you always clear in your communication?
I was definitely, might be.
Okay, I can read between the lines. That English has me thinking for a minute, but I think I know your answer.
Yeah, no, but I used to put an advert, or, you know, when I sell my paintings, I used to use a caveat, which was, because I have no provenance, I'm selling in the style of or after the artist. And I would sometimes I'd put addresses on the back of the artist, or little hints to give it a little bit more authenticity. But what used to happen was I used to sell paintings for about £1,000. Then I'd see it sold along the line somewhere, and I've sold it in the style of or with no provenance, and then it would end up going in an auction somewhere for quite a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So people were all along the line. There, people are I sell you a painting, and someone says, well, that's worth 10,000. You think, oh, I gave 1,000 for it.
Yeah.
Do you think I should put it? You're tenfolding your money.
Got it.
Well, it's a cheeky little thing. I'll do it once, and you put it in, and and it goes through, and you think, well, I'll do that again. Okay. So it happens.
Would you be able to reveal what's the most expensive painting that you sold directly?
I don't know. I've sold so many.
I mean, do you have a figure in mind? £100,000, £50,000, £20,000? Surely that must stick out if it's a big ticket sale.
Well, not really. I mean, I'm prolific, and I've been working for a good 25, 30 years. I've had quite a few big ticket items, but not always for me. Someone would sell it,
Shying away from it. Has there ever a time where you thought that, you know what, I'm really good at it. Okay, people are not buying David Henty, fair enough, but could I segue and let's say work with law enforcement, or could I have another career path, or that just never crossed your mind?
Well, to tell you the truth, I sell lots of paintings. I sell much more paintings than most people. So it's never crossed my mind in that respect. What has crossed my mind is every now and again I like to do a fake or a painting that would go through, that would fool the experts. I don't sell them, but I like to just hone my craft and just make sure it's done with the right period materials, it's done on the canvas, and it, just between me, just for myself, I like to know that yes, I could. There was a little instance. I gave. I don't know if you've heard of Peter James, the author.
I've heard of him. Yes.
Yeah, Peter. Well, I'm in one of his books, and I'm in another one of his books. Actually, we're just doing one at the moment. But I gave him a Lowry painting.
Why do I feel that it's not the original one? But go on.
No, I just made it up. It was just one of my own Lowrys that I made up.
Lowry by David Henty. Okay.
Yeah, I was signed Lowry, funny enough, but it was on an old panel. Anyway, I gave it to him, and he had it in his house, and he was doing a talk one day, an after dinner talk, and he said he had Tim Wonnacott from the Antiques program on TV. Mm-hmm. He said had him for lunch, and he said Tim looked at the painting and said, "Oh yeah, it's definitely a genuine Lowry." And so it's just those little things. As a forger, it's those little ticks. Yes, I've done it right. Yes, if I was to put that through, it'd make 30 to 50,000. And it would go through. But I remember doing a talk years ago, after dinner talk, and it was about fakes, and it wasn't just me talking, but it was about Nikes and the places where they make these in China and stuff. They have a certain kudos to be as good as they can. So they're fakes. They're trying to make them as Rolex watches. They've got better and better. Everything at all you can make, and there's a certain kudos to make it as good as you can, because the Picasso brand is built up and up. It's £10 million. So you're buying into that thing. It might still, to me, it's still a bit of oil paint on canvas, with a pretty frame around it. That's all it is. And I look at a painting. I was in Sotheby's yesterday, and I looked at the Picassos, and to tell you the truth, I was there with Billy the Brush, and I said, if we did these, Billy, because they're not very good, we couldn't pass these off because these were poor Picassos. They weren't very good, and he was probably experimenting, trying to come to an idea, and he dashed them off, and we couldn't have done that. We can't do that because it's a poor Picasso. You have to do a good Picasso, So it's quite a funny.
David, how did the Wise team get in touch with you, and how did they end up shooting the documentary?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can see it. I've got the painting up there of Salvador Mundi. That's the most expensive painting in the world by Leonardo. Well,
Salvador Mundi by David Henty. But go ahead.
Yeah. But they phoned me one day, and it was because I hadn't heard of Vice, being a sort of dinosaur, you know. And so they phoned me one day. It was a nice sunny day, and they said, "Oh, would you be interested in doing a little video on Vice?" You know. So I said, "Yeah, okay, but I'm just going down the beach. Can you phone back in a few hours?" It's really nice. I'm going for a swim because we live just 2 minutes from the sea. So anyway, so luckily they phoned back, and I was there with my son-in-law. My son-in-law said, "What are you doing, Vice? You know, they've got a really big company." So anyway, so they phoned back, and we had a chat, and they were doing a documentary about Yves Bouvier, the guy who sold the Salvador Mundi. And there was a big controversy about it and stuff. And he was getting sued by I think it's Ribeloff, the billionaire. So they wanted Billy and I to do, you know, put our little bits in about, you know, art forgery in the market and stuff. But what happened was we did ours, and they were so pleased with it. They said, "Oh, we're going to release it on our own, on its own." So, and it was quite funny because they said, "Would you do it with your friend Billy?" So I phoned Billy up, and he's a bit camera shy, and he said, "Well, can we pixelate my face and just call me the brush in the film?" So anyway, so I phoned him back up and said, "Look, Billy will do it. He wants to be pixelated. And just refer to him as the brush." And they said, yeah. But it was only a joke, you know. We didn't really do that. But no, so we did it. We never thought much of it. And you know, it's just the sort of thing you do. And I love talking about art and forgeries and that sort of inside. And yeah, we've had I think 1.1 million views or something.
Yeah, it's done all right. You know, the title was fantastic because they did the same video on Vice Asia with another title, and that's got like a fraction of the views. So I think the headline was done. The interview was brilliant as well, and you guys, it was fun banter, and I just think that it was just two normal folks who were really good at forgery, and it was like a day in the life of following them, and it was fun for a layman like myself who has zero idea about art. I want to ask you. So I had a proper artist, a Portuguese art, you know, oil painter a little while ago, and he's dabbled into the NFT space. What is your take on NFTs?
I don't. I've had a couple of offers, but I don't quite understand it. And to be truthful, I suppose I'm not like yourself. I'm not that computer literate and stuff. So I just paint, and I just enjoy what I do. I earn a good living out of it. I got yesterday. I've got to do a portrait of an Elizabethan woman on an old panel, and they want it for quite a prestigious place. You know, and I'm really interested in it because I've got a source of a panel from the 1500s. I've got to source the oil paints and a frame, and it's a real project that I enjoy doing. So it doesn't really affect me, or I'm not that interested, you know.
Got it. So I'm assuming that you're not accepting Bitcoin as a mode of payment. Cash is king in David Henty's world.
Cash is king. You
know? Listen, go ahead.
I'm going to watch. I'm live streaming the Sotheby's auction later today.
Okay.
But there's a Banksy in there that they're accepting Bitcoins. The estimate's 2.5 to 3.5 million. Well, I'm quite interested in that. But they're accepting Bitcoins for that.
Yeah.
Sotheby's, which is quite interesting because.
So that is so I can talk a lot more on that because, you know, so I've had somebody, we've talked, I mean, our podcast interview ran for almost an hour and I had to chop it down. But I think for a lot of people as well, you know, the Beeple painting and, you know, some of the more famous works, there's been a lot of issues, or let's say there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on with money laundering. There's a lot of stuff going on with, so it's not as clear cut as Bitcoin being used as a proper payment. There's a new coin which is floated by somebody you've never heard of, and it's pump and dump, and it's quite shady. I mean, the art world anyways is complicated enough, and now throw in Bitcoin, and you know, and I think Bitcoin is depreciated by what, about 20-30% in the last month as well. So so there's some massive issues going on over there. But David, I enjoyed our conversation. It's been we've talked more than a half an hour, and it's just been fun for me. I feel we could have talked for another half an hour the way things are going, and you have a lot more stories. But very quickly, you said you're working on a piece right now. Are you still painting like 2 or 3 different pieces of art a day?
Have you got? There's this is a
Wow.
That's a Caravaggio. Caravaggio. There's Basquiat there. I don't know if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the 110 million one.
Okay. All right, David. I'm going to put an asterisk next to all these numbers, but fair enough. So
Picasso. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So I'm still painting. This is just a spare room.
And what do you do, like, if you need to like switch off, and do you still paint when you need to switch off, or do you like watch football, or do you have a go out or take a vacation or something? Because I heard you work every day.
I work every day. Do you know, my great thing is I get up early in the morning and I just paint, and maybe I'll have the radio and I've some background noise, but that's how I relax. Is I'll sort of just put paint on the canvas, work out how they did this, and that for me. And when I go on holiday, I get twitchy when I haven't got canvas, so it's my way of relaxing. It's my way of downloading and, and just chilling, really,
Fair enough.
And that's what I like doing.
All right. And you have a website as well. What's the name of your website?
There's David at davidhentyart.co.uk.
Perfect.
And I've got my pieces on for sale.
I noticed there were a couple of expensive ones, probably a little bit out of my budget. There's one 30,000 pounds, a few 50,000 pounds. So, if anyone has some spare cash, they can reach out to David. So, listen, David, thank you. An absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Don't do what David does. He's a little bit of, he's been doing it for a little while, but, he's still somebody you can admire from an artistic point of view. And David, thank you for being on the podcast.
That's all right. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.